Hi, I'm Isabel Thornton, Executive Director of Restoration Housing. In this Architectural Minute, we're visiting Claytor Memorial Clinic in the historic Gainsboro community of Roanoke. Claytor Memorial Clinic is a beautiful blonde brick Art Deco building from the 1940s that sits north of downtown in Roanoke and which has been vacant for decades. To learn more about its history in the Gainsboro community, we talked with educator, activist, and historian Jordan Bell.
We're standing in front of the Claytor Memorial Clinic. We're in Gainsboro, one of the most historical areas in the city of Roanoke. And the Claytor Memorial Clinic is a very important piece to the city of Roanoke, but specifically to the Gainsboro area. It was finished in 1948, and it was Dr. John B. Claytor Sr. was asked or told by his wife to build a clinic so that he and his sons could work together. And so they started to build the clinic, and unfortunately she passed away before the clinic was finished in 1948. But the idea was that Dr. John B. Claytor Sr. and his four sons would work together in the clinic. Walter Claytor, who was a dentist, Frank Claytor, John B. Claytor Jr., and then Ralph Claytor, he kept the books for the clinic. So they all worked together to build and maintain the clinic.
Dr. John B. Claytor was part of a group of doctors working to bring better healthcare opportunities to Roanoke's African American community. During segregation, the use of Roanoke Memorial Hospital was not open to all, so African American doctors were limited to in-home healthcare until the 19-teens, when Burl Memorial Hospital was constructed. Dr. Claytor was one of the founding members of Burl Memorial Hospital. Both Burl Memorial and the Claytor Memorial Clinic were segregated healthcare facilities until integration in the 1960s. Here's Jordan to tell us more. Could you tell us about some of the challenges in getting this building built?
Well, some of the challenges were this piece of property was always a challenge to be built. I'll start with the home part of it. It was a 23-room mansion directly behind this building.
That belonged to Dr. Claytor?
That belonged to Dr. Claytor, that was built in the early 1920s. And that was a huge challenge because no one in the city wanted to build a home of that magnitude for an African American. So that was a challenge, and his father-in-law actually had to bring up materials and workers from Bristol, Tennessee on the railroad to build that home. And then they built a service station on the Gilmer Avenue side, which is directly next to the clinic and the home. And then about 20 years later, they started to build the clinic. And the clinic was built by the men of the family and with help of the community. But it was kind of a challenge from the start of buying this piece of property because it's right here in Gainsboro, and it was a huge staple in a statement that an African American family built a 23-room mansion, a service station, and a memorial clinic all on the property that they own.
Right. Jordan talked to me about the home that Dr. Claytor and his family built. It originally sat behind the clinic and was an impressive 23-room house. It was destroyed in a fire years later, but the steps leading up to the site are still framed by the words Dr. Claytor, memorialized in the sidewalk in an effort to claim ownership to a property that had been so difficult to develop. So on that point, I wanted to point out we're just north of downtown. And for those that are watching that don't know a lot about Gainsboro and the parts of Gainsboro that are kind of more identified with downtown now, like the hotel, the interstate that goes right through it, and the Berglund Center. How did those developments affect the historic fabric of this neighborhood?
Well, the interstate, I'll use the interstate as an example, that totally cut through a neighborhood. So when they built the interstate, they totally wiped out a neighborhood. The Berglund Center is a part of that. It's actually a postcard, I was telling someone earlier, it's actually a postcard that was used to promote the Berglund Center, which was known as the Roanoke Civic Center. And in that postcard, it's actually 3 homes next to the Civic Center. So while they were promoting the Civic Center, they were also showing, hey, we have homes right next to the Civic Center. So it just totally wiped out the fabric and the community aspect of the neighborhood. And those people had to move away. They were kicked out of the neighborhood. It just kind of just took the soul and the spirit of what Gainsboro used to be.
I've read a little bit about redevelopment in Gainsboro, and what I think is so upsetting to sort of piece together in this conversation is I think the shameful history of redevelopment is one thing, but you compound it with the fact, the knowledge of what went into building these communities in the first place, the obstacles to getting the materials, to getting laborers, and how difficult it was to carve a community through those obstacles, and then to have it also bulldozed through. And so, to me, I think it's a compounding effect when we get to know more about the history that way. All right, well, we just wanted to thank you so much for your time today, Jordan. We really appreciate it, and we appreciate the great work you're doing in the community. Thank you. Take care. Thanks for watching this Architectural Minute. We hope you enjoyed learning more about the historic Gainsboro community. If you'd like to learn more, please find the links connected to this video.